Hi, my name's Beth and I'm a programming coordinator for the St. Johns County Public Library System. I am here in the jewelry studio of Kitt Stewart and Co, a jewelry designer who's actually based out of Virginia. I'm going to learn a little bit about some of the different tools that she uses to make jewelry. First, there are many different types of pliers used in jewelry making. Flat nose, round nose, chain nose, concave and convex pliers, many others. These here are bent nose pliers, which are especially useful for jump rings and also for great for holding, like she's showing us here. This is a very specific cutter, which is used for cutting for solder. There's all kinds of cutters: diagonal cutters, end cutters, oblique cutters, sprue cutters, bevel, flush, super flush, double flush. There's just a bunch of different kinds. It's really kind of a rabbit hole. These that she's showing off are wire bending pliers. And then she's also going to show us a set that's great for making circles. So we'll just watch her here. Here she is showing me a really useful drill. You can use it for pretty much anything. It currently has a polishing bit on it. You can see a little piece of kind of fabric, almost soft blue on there. But you could, say you needed to saw something, you could put a tiny drill bit on it. So you could take a piece of metal that you wanted to saw and you'd poke a tiny hole in it and then saw the metal out so it's separated like you see on the left of this piece. To make something like these bracelets, she might either use one of those sets of pliers we saw a moment ago, or she might use her mandrel. So you can bend the metal using a nylon hammer, and you basically just put the metal around it. And I asked what that little square on the end was, and that is something you can connect onto your bench to hold it. Among this collection of hammers and brushes, she's showing me a texture hammer. This is something you can put little pieces on there to imprint on your metal. So essentially you would put your metal on this steel square, which is acting like a bench block so that you can hammer your metal on. Or that also acts as a heat sink. If you are soldering something, it will be really hot. You can place it here when you finish soldering so that it can cool for a moment and be easier to handle. Her soldering station is here. It almost looks like a kiln. She uses this if she needs to do a big flame since she's inside. She'll basically take the top off and kind of work in there as it acts as a little forge basically, so it's safe. And so she's got her torches over here, and wow, just so many tools everywhere. She's got some shapers down here and some files, so many things. This jig is probably Kathryn's favorite tool. When you go to make a bracelet and you go to connect the two ends, it has to be perfectly flat. So when you go to connect, there isn't any air or light in between. But as you can imagine, trying to file a piece of metal that tiny can be challenging. So you just wouldn't be able to make it file it flush by hand. So you clamp the metal into this little jig. You choose the angle you want and clamp it in and then set it flat so that when you file it, it comes out perfectly flat. And you can use it at different angles, like a 45-degree angle or a 60-degree angle like you see right there. On the other side of her bench, Kathryn has a large collection of metal dies, and these dies are actually a really important part of American history. Starting in the late 1790s and early 1800s, the jewelry industry became a driving force in early industrial age America, and it really centered in Providence, Rhode Island. There were several converging things happening there. There was a really important ship port. So captains would stop at the port of Providence and looking to add some value to the quantities of silver bullion and coin that they had on board, they started employing silversmiths to transform their silver into goods that they could sell for more money, like buttons or buckles or flatware or what have you. But in addition to the silversmiths, Providence also had a booming textile industry, which brought machinists and machine tools and people who could, work on intricate metal. And then finally, there was the development of clad metals that also was happening at that time. So these hand-engraved dies from the early 1800s, later in the 19th century, they play an important role in why American jewelry became affordable to the average person. So that claddagh ring, or Kathryn's showing us a classic drop earring. These could be mass-produced. So you take a piece of metal. This is too thick, but basically you would cut it out, put it on top of your die, and let's take this piece of paper towel, pretending that's the silver. You put it on top of your die, and you would put these little pressy kind of things. They're squishy, and you put that on top of the silver, and press down, and it's going to essentially act like a cookie cutter. It's a 20-ton press, so there's 20 tons of pressure. That's the pressure gauge, and that little piece is essentially like a car jack, and you use that to press it. So first you heat up your metal, and then you put it on the press, and you'll heat it and then press it. Heat it up and then press it. Heat it up and press it. And then after 3 or 4 times, you'll have something that looks like this. This is a newer die, but that is essentially how it's always been done. So to make a pendant, you can now saw all the metal out using a drill like we saw earlier, or what Kathryn plans to do is make a lid for a jar that she found on her property. So she's going to shape the metal, and then she'll put cork on the back of it, and there it will be, so pretty. These need to be polished, but this is eventually going to become a hair barrette. And this one will be a hair stick. It's so pretty. These are texture plates. Like this one's a Ouija board. Whoa. Those texture plates you can use for bangle or cuff bracelets, or you can hammer it really onto anything, like the back of a pendant or a ring that you might shape. She keeps plastic over them to keep her tools from rusting, so you can put a little bit of olive oil on it and then the plastic, and that will keep your tools safe. This one is so pretty. I just really feel like I could spend all day in here. Okay, Kathryn showed me so many more things, but one last thing I want to show you is this beautiful bowl she made. So first she pressed that mandala shape onto the silver using one of those stainless steel dies. And then using a pancake die, she cut the bear shape out. And then that was soldered into the copper. To make the bowl, she had used a chasing hammer and just basically hammered it out into a bowl shape. And then she soldered that bear inside. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I learned so much. I thought it was so interesting, and I'm pretty excited actually to do a little further research myself. If you want to do any further research, we have all kinds of resources in the St. Johns County Public Library system about jewelry design and jewelry making, and you can either ask somebody at your local library or search our catalog, www.sjcpls.org. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you soon in the library. Bye-bye.